All right, so we are, as John's just found the book, we're going through the Apologetics Press book, Does God Exist? I believe Dave Miller is the editor, but we have different authors for each chapter, and we are opening up the chapter. Which chapter are we on? We're on part 1 of the teleological argument. It starts on page 62. Sean started this last Sunday, and I'm picking up where he left off. But if you look at chapter 7, Jeff Miller does the chapter 6. That's part 1 of the teleological argument. And I'm thinking he probably does part 2 as well. Let me see here. So double check. Well, Dave Miller does part 2 in chapter 7. And he briefly mentions the eye, the human eye. And it's probably, you probably have a lot of the same design in whatever eye is in nature. Does anybody know how the eye works? Did anybody tell me how the eyeball works?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, Larry's had some experience recently on how it doesn't work. And it doesn't work very well if that back retina detaches. It doesn't work very well there. But basically, light enters through the cornea of your eyeball. That's the clear, curved outer layer. And it begins refracting immediately. It then passes through the pupil, that dark spot in your eye, which is controlled by the iris, which the iris expands. You recall, if you've ever been to the eye doctor, what they'll do is they'll dilate your eyes. That means they'll broaden that. Your pupil will appear larger. Really, that's your iris expanding and contracting. And so it's basically like a living aperture. The reason I'm bringing this up is because we're going to be talking about biological mimicry this morning and how it supports the teleological argument. And so behind the iris sits the lens, and that is a flexible, transparent piece that basically fine-tunes your focus by manipulating its shape. And that process is called accommodation. And so it depends on whether you are looking near or far. This lens is manipulating shape to help you see closer or farther away. And your muscles do this. Let's see, what's it called? Ciliary muscles do this. This is controlled involuntarily. It does all this. You're not controlling that yourself. Ciliary muscles are doing that. And then the focus light then travels through the vitreous humor, a clear gel filling the eye. It strikes the retina at the back of the eye. And the retina contains 120 million rod cells. So what these things do, these rods, they detect light and motion. And then you have 6 to 7 million cone cells, which detect color. And each of these is packed into a tissue that is thinner than a sheet of paper. Pretty remarkable. And at the most critical point on your retina is the fovea, which is a tiny pit at the center of the macula, where the cone density is the highest, and that produces your sharpest vision. And so the rods and those cones, those then convert light into electrical signals. Those go through a photochemical process involving a protein called rhodopsin. And those signals travel through the optic nerve, which is a bundle of roughly 1.2 million nerve fibers. And that takes it to the visual cortex at the back of the brain. And that then assembles those signals into the image that you receive. Is there any design in that? Could you have designed that? Could any man have designed that? We're going to be talking about biological mimicry and how that that camera up there, every camera that the camera that man thinks he invented is based or uses a lot of that same logic. But But to fit 120 million rod cells, 6 to 7 million cone cells, that's not something man has the capability of engineering in this small little thing in our heads. And so, the psalmist said in Psalm 94:9, "He that planted the ear, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, shall he not see?" Even ancient man had to marvel at how these things looked. How
every species eye is different.
Yep.
Talking about the rods and cones, the numbers of rods and cones in our eyes is nothing compared to like a hawk's eye.
That's very true.
Or an owl's eye.
There's a reason we can't see like a hawk or an owl, right?
Night vision some animals have.
That's very true. Coming from a vet, that's a very good insight. So he that planted the ear, we have to marvel at some of these things. And again, he mentions this in chapter 7, and we are in chapter 6, if you didn't catch that. The teleological argument for the existence of God. Can anybody tell me what the teleological argument is? We kind of started this last week, Sean started it. To have a design, you must have a designer, right? Yep, to have a design. So the teleological argument, and again, I think Dave mentions this in chapter 7, telos is where we get that word, the root of that word teleological. That's telos, end, purpose, goal. If you think about what things have purposes, they're usually designed, aren't they? A chair, for instance, it's designed to sit on. It's you can use it for other things, but its design is for us to sit on. When someone started fabricating a chair, they had that purpose in mind. That was in their mind, and they designed it appropriately. And as such, the chair, for instance, it's not the shape of a cone. That would not be conducive to sitting. Instead, it's got 4 legs. It's stable. It's flat. Sometimes it has a cushion. There's design in those things. The designer of this chair wanted us to be comfortable. So the teleological argument reasons from the evidence of purpose and design in creation to the existence of a powerful designer. Now, let me ask you, if an atheist, which is someone who denies the existence of God, if an atheist admits there is design in the universe, what is that atheist admitting? There's a designer. That's getting to the teleological argument. But if he admits there's design in the universe, first of all, he has to admit there's purpose in the universe, right? There's purpose. There's a reason gravitational forces work the way they do. There's a reason those millions of cells at the back of our eyes work the way they do. And to say that there's purpose means someone purposed it. It has to mean that. Paul Ricky, there on chapter, I think we read this last week. Yep, therefore, on page 62, it's true, in that first paragraph, it's true that everything designed has a designer. Everything designed has a designer is an analytically true statement. Now, Paul Ricky, he says he's an atheist philosopher. Now, he says everything designed has a designer, and he says that is an analytically true statement. Now, this statement comes from an atheist. He's not arguing for God, yet his own logic demands one. His own logic demands a designer. And this is if you haven't caught on, this book does very well. It takes atheists, it takes evolutionists, humanists, naturalists, it takes them all, takes their own words and turns it into an argument for the existence of God. And it does it very effectively, as you've seen there. So Paul Ricky's quote there. So does the Bible ever utilize the teleological argument? Yeah, it does. Let's if I could get you guys to read a few passages for me. Psalm 19:1. Then if I could have someone read Romans 1:20, and someone Hebrews 3:4. Psalm 19:1 would be the first passage here.
Psalm 19:1. For the chief musician, a psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
All right, thank you, brother. The heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament showeth his handiwork. We brought this up also when we went over the cosmological argument. Romans 1:20, someone.
For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even with eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
All right, thank you, brother. Hebrews 3:4, someone.
For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God.
All right, thank you very much. So, again, relevant to the cosmological argument and relevant to the teleological argument. And then finally, Acts 17:26-28.
And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwelling, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grow for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, and also some of our own poets have said, for we are also his offspring.
All right, thank you, brother. So, Acts 17:26-28, God's provided us so much evidence. God has given us so much in nature that we've, by the way, so far we've looked at the intuitional argument. That's the first thing we went over. Nearly all people across all cultures have this intuitive sense that God exists, that there must be a creator, there must be a designer, and that the intuitional argument speaks to that, suggests that that is implanted in our nature rather than something that our culture constructs or our culture makes up. Then we went over the cosmological argument, which basically says because everything exists, it has a cause, the universe itself must have a cause, must have an ultimate uncaused first cause, which is God. Then we went over the moral argument. That was the last thing before we got into teleological. So the existence of objective moral law, right and wrong, the fact that that exists, and all people recognize it exists, I would think. We looked, when we went over that, Thomas Warren got Antony Flew to admit that the Nazis were wrong. You know, it's an easy thing for us to admit. But the atheist, when he's presented with that, has a difficult time reconciling that with the fact that all there is matter. There is no God, he would say. Moral laws, and we're going to get into this with teleological, a law requires what? A lawgiver, a lawmaker, right? So if moral laws exist, which we all agree do, and most would agree do, there must be a lawgiver who gave that law, and that would be God. We have natural laws, and that's where the teleological argument comes in. We have natural laws. Who gave those laws? And we would argue God. So We have 5 atheist admissions in chapter 6 that Jeff Miller gives us. And so the first admission is this: we need to figure out who wrote the laws of science. And just a few quotes, and these are provided in the book. Stephen Hawking, which we're probably all familiar with him. Did we need a God to set it all up so that the Big Bang could bang? Right? The Big Bang, we've mentioned it a few times. The Big Bang basically says what? That theory says what?
All matter within a form small and magically exploded.
Right.
The largest explosion ever that we still feel reverberations of today.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So almost nothing exploded into everything. Right. That's the crux of the argument here. So Stephen Hawking, here he's saying that the laws of nature are unbreakable and universal, but then he asked, did God create the quantum laws that allowed the Big Bang to occur? So the Big Bang, according to him, occurred, and we have natural laws, but the Big Bang must adhere to natural law, mustn't it? So who wrote the law that would have caused the Big Bang if the Big Bang happened? Who wrote the law, right? Stephen Hawking, he asks this question and he does not answer it. He did not answer it.
Did he raise another question or something the way it came about? That, he's not addressing what you're saying, but what there's more to it. Theory and everything, even from any question.
Are you talking about in the chapter?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So we can go ahead and read it there. It's on page 63. Let's after that block quote, it says, Hawking, in obvious awe, acknowledged that the laws of nature exist, are unbreakable, without exception, and apply to the entire universe, not just to the Earth. But that admission by the evolutionary community presents a major problem for atheists. And here I summarized Martin Gardner, that block quote here. It's up on the screen. There is no escape from the super ultimate questions. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing? That is the cosmological argument, by the way. Why is there something rather than nothing? And then, why is something structured? Why is the something structured the way it is? So I think I have one more quote here. Paul Davies, the idea that laws exist reasonlessly is deeply anti-rational. If one traces these reasons all the way down to the bedrock of reality, the laws of physics only define that reason then deserts us. It makes a mockery of science. And I think that's well said. To say that there are laws that just happen to exist, just so happen to fine-tune the universe. We'll see the word fine-tune later. But to say that those things are just random, he says it makes a mockery of science. He also wrote, until science comes up with a testable theory of the laws of the universe, its claim to be free of faith is manifestly bogus. So the fact that we can have laws that the entire universe adheres to, and yet nobody gave that law, is manifestly bogus, as he says.
I think it's important to understand atheism isn't science-backed at its base.
Right.
It makes massive theory to get from that to that.
Right.
And it's really important to understand that atheism is a religion based on blind faith. You have to understand that. It isn't scientifically backed. It is simply another denomination worshiping a different God.
Right. They will get to a point where they can't explain something. And they'll say, well, the universe is just a brute fact. It's just here. It always has been. And, or, they'll get to a point where they cannot explain it. Now, of course, I can get to a point where I can explain it because we have an all-powerful creator who is outside nature, and only one who is outside nature could have created nature. Nature could not have created itself. Yes, ma'am.
It seems to throughout the following people and but
Mhm. Yep.
I mean, it seems like
Right.
it's not, you're not going to change it.
Yeah. In a sense, they're doing their work. They're showing their work on an equation and doing it all right and then getting to the end and it's wrong. Right. So that's basically what we're seeing. Yes, sir.
Yes, Steve, explain to us how the eye is made up of. We don't know how what we see translates to an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Something we can't figure out. And how that sound becomes an idea.
Yeah. If you think about that, I'm not sure animals can determine a 2D or a one-dimensional picture, right? And to say, oh, well, that's a dog. Right? We as humans can do that, right? That's another thing, probably another topic. But, yep, so the logic of, Isaiah 40 and verse 26, someone please.
Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things, who brings out their heads by number. He calls them all by name, by the greatness of his name and the strength of his power, not one is missing.
All right, thank you very much. We actually just went over this in our Isaiah class a few Wednesdays ago. But if the laws of nature cannot create themselves, what does that demand? If the laws of creation, nature cannot create themselves, what does that demand? Someone outside nature created them. And so Hawking, as we saw, he doesn't answer his question. What does that reveal about the limits of atheism? I think Larry answered that. It's blind faith. So the logic of this, a law requires a lawgiver. The laws of physics exist. Therefore, what? A lawgiver exists. A law requires a lawgiver. The laws of physics exist. A lawgiver exists. Everybody remember what this is called? Huh? Premise. These are premises, and this is a conclusion. This is a syllogism. Remember from logic in the Bible? So law requires a lawgiver. I've got one of these for every one of these admissions. Any comments or questions? All right. So the second atheist admission is we need to know who created life. We need to know who created life. Now, Richard Dawkins, this is a quote from him. If you look at the details of our chemistry, molecular biology, you might find a signature of some kind of designer. And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. We all know the name Richard Dawkins, right? He's pretty well-known atheist. This came from his book, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. So if you look at the details, you might find a signature of some kind of designer. That designer could very well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. That's blind faith, isn't it? It's like we have no evidence of higher intelligence out, physical intelligence, but that's the jump that he made. That's the jump that Richard Dawkins made.
It's also stubborn.
Yeah.
Because he knows what answer he's trying to avoid,
Mm-hmm.
which is God. And by no means ever admit that that could ever be a possibility in the list of possibilities. It has to be alien or the planet or something that we have to about. But it can't be. It's God that everybody's been talking about over these many centuries. It just can't be.
Absolutely, yeah. Just writes off the possibility of it there being an intelligent designer who is not bound by the laws of nature. So what's the problem? Anybody see a problem with this? And that the fact that it's blind faith, that it's a leap to say this at the beginning, what's the major problem with that designer could be a higher intelligence from somewhere else in the universe?
One thing, that's the title of the book. That's who we apply this information to.
That's right.
It's not allowed.
Yeah.
Or you're not allowed to think about anything beyond what they're not said. And I think, right, all these people were, when they were children, when they were, you might have been called,
Mhm.
but they were stubborn, hard-headed, confused, anything that you could to them. And they no, give me that.
Right.
They ran their whole life through that thought.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people out there who still follow that. Because, God, he says, because you got power, that's what he can do.
Right. Yep.
You know, it seems to me that I don't care what subject we're talking about, what they're playing, it all goes back to God,
Mhm.
and they don't want to go there.
Right.
So we're talking about.
Yep. So they will go to the point where they will invent things. They will just straight up invent things. So, but the major problem with this is if these designers were higher intelligence than we from elsewhere in the universe, they're physical beings, aren't they? Does that not imply that they're physical beings? If he's saying from somewhere else in the universe, he's talking about extraterrestrials, right? He's talking about some alien form that is physical, right? And so what's the problem here?
They were made also.
They were made also, right? So they are amenable to the laws of physics, aren't they? And who created those laws, right? It's staring you right in the face, the problem with this. So that came from Richard Dawkins. Another one from Richard Dawkins. The more statistically improbable a thing is, the less we can believe that it just happened by blind chance. Superficially, the obvious alternative to chance is an intelligent designer. It's like you were saying, they're failing the test. They're showing their work. I mean, is this not true? The more statistically improbable a thing is, the less we can believe that it happened by blind chance. Does that make sense? Yep. Yeah, the whole statement's true, but he doesn't come to the conclusion, does he? He does not admit this himself.
The other statement, I always find it really interesting when people use the word could well be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, could well be. He's almost admitted it. He knows it's there. I just say it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you said, there's people who are so sorry, right? I don't know, just getting tired.
Yeah, it's a cop-out to say could well be, or it might, there's a possibility. Yeah. So, yeah. It's hard to disprove could, right? But he's admitting here it's statistically improbable. The more statistically improbable it becomes, the less you can believe it happened by chance. So what's the logic? Oh, Genesis 2:7, real quick.
And Jehovah God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul.
All right, thank you very much. So where did life come from? Where can life come from? Can life come from non-life? I think right, law of biogenesis. We might have touched on this in the cosmological argument. So another syllogism. Well, life only comes from life. That's the law of biogenesis. Does life exist? You deny that life exists? It exists, therefore an original living source outside nature must exist. That's not a perfect syllogism, but life only comes from life. Life exists, so life must have come from life, right? Life must have come from an intelligent designer. And because he's the one that wrote the laws of physics, the laws of nature, he's got to be outside nature, right? So Dawkins called an intelligent designer the obvious alternative. The obvious alternative. What does it reveal about a man that admits this, that sees the obvious answer, yet does not hold to it, does not believe it?
He's not really looking for the truth.
Absolutely. He's not looking for the truth. He's just trying to prove his point. Comments or questions?
This is directly connected to, that idea of beginning matter. Matter can be created or destroyed if it changes form. It's the same exact amount of matter today that we did, at the beginning of time. So, and that's scientific. That's not anything but science. So the only way that beginning can exist is something outside of matter created.
Mm-hmm.
The only
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's the exact same. It's hand in hand with law.
Thermodynamics, right. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. And so if you had a little tiny speck of everything that makes up the universe now, and it exploded into everything the universe is, it's not compliant with that law, is it? Right. Yep.
Like, God is a big piece, like, this is theological, and I really believe that, you go to any mental biology class, you go to any, college, class, they're teaching it, and students are reading it, and then the students go up and graduate college.
Mhm.
So, they continue to read this, and so, be able to convince it, to be able to say, this is why it is changed, sit down and then say, then you say, the main solution, the main solution is, we didn't keep the level
Right. Okay. Part of that's probably trust in the institutions. These are my professors. They're telling me this, so they must be right. Right. We need to be able to defend against it for sure.
If you boil it down to essence, it's kind of like saying you have a pot maker,
Mm-hmm.
it's got a wheel, you have a clay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying the pot just appeared.
Right.
It has to be a maker.
Right. Absolutely. You've got all the evidence in front of you. You've got how it was, how this thing was constructed. The tools are logical on how to create a pot, and yet the thing just appeared. Right. It's just not logical.
One thing that's really important from this point is Christian life. We translate into what we face as Christians when we face the world, where we're going to have the majority of the world against us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have knowledge like the reason why we have classes like this, we have to have knowledge like this because as Corey was saying, you're going to be in a situation where 100 people are in front of you, and all of them are against you, and you're the only one. You have to understand and have faith in a rock solid foundation and never move, or you will be swayed.
Mm-hmm.
People are. It's easy to be swayed with the majority.
Yes.
To be swayed.
Yep.
And that is in this situation. That's what happened in Black meeting. And that's what happened in, they're basically 25 friends who want to leave the government,
Mhm.
but you're the only one who understands the truth.
Yep, absolutely. It's very important. Important that we teach our children this, and important that we understand it ourselves. Mhm.
And those people doing, witnessing not what you say.
Mhm. Right? Yeah. If they could find the people that taught them.
Well, they're all with them.
Yeah, right, right. So the third admission here within chapter 6, we have to figure out a way to explain all this design in nature. So I know we have less than 5 minutes here. We have a cosmologist here, Bernard Carr. If you don't want God, you better have a multiverse. Does anybody know what a multiverse is? It is stuff of science fiction. It's the X-Files
It's where the
type,
vampires live.
where the vampires live.
That's how silly it seems to me.
Right. Yes. This is a Marvel movie stuff. This is, you know,
Fringe.
the Fringe, exactly. I was going to go there. The Fringe was, it's the, well, I don't want to give any spoilers. I guess it's been out for a few years, but the very premise of Fringe is that they can move between universes. And the idea of the multiverse, just to summarize it as best I can, is there just exists a universe where every possible what do you say?
Variation of.
Yeah, you have every possible variation of the universe itself. Or the pixie does it.
By the way, when the multiverse was introduced in the Marvel movie, when the Marvel movie started to be really bad.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, Captain America's dead. Oh, he's alive. Yep. So this is a worse pop out than extraterrestrial life, I think. It's like, oh well, because we have such great design in nature, well, there must just be a multiverse where every possible variation of the universe exists. And I would, if I were presented with this, if I were before Bernard Carr, I'd say, well, is there a universe where you're not an atheist? Is there a universe where you believe in intelligent design? And were you right in that universe? You know, I don't know. But so again, it's just another pop out. Let me see what I can handle in. Let's see. Physicist Andre Lind, if we double the mass of the electron, life as we know it will disappear. Why are there 3 space dimensions and 1 time dimension? If we had 4 space dimensions and 1 time dimension, then planetary systems would be unstable and our version of life would be impossible. He's addressing the fine-tuning of the universe and not coming to the proper conclusion here. So the multiverse proposed to do what? Why does he propose a multiverse? It's the same reason they proposed extraterrestrial life. They just do not want to come to the conclusion that there is a God that created all things. So one more quote. Call it a fluke by Tim Folger here. Call it a fluke, a mystery, a miracle, or call it the biggest problem in physics. Short of invoking a benevolent creator, which he doesn't want to do, right? Short of invoking a benevolent creator, many physicists see only one possible explanation, and they go to the multiverse. So, right, absolutely. Because if there was a lawgiver for the laws of physics, there's a lawgiver for the laws of morality. What does that mean for me, right? That means I'm amenable to some law that maybe I don't want to be amenable to.
Well, a lot of, well, I think it's still going on, but more prevalent a few years ago, the discussion is, that's your truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is my truth.
Yeah.
And so that's the argument. Okay, no, this is what the truth is. No, you tell me.
Right. If we all have our own different truths, then there is no truth. right? So the logic, just to summarize admission number 3, that we have to figure out a way to explain all this design in nature. The logic is clear. Fine-tuning requires a fine-tuner. The universe is unmistakably fine-tuned for life. There are other things we could have gotten into this morning, but therefore, there must be a fine-tuner. Pretty simple. Most syllogisms are. Fine-tuning requires a fine-tuner. The universe is unmistakably fine-tuned for life. There must be a fine-tuner. Inventing an unobservable universe, some universe you can't observe or test or anything, that's not science, that is blind faith. Same for the extraterrestrial claim. And so next week, I'll just tell Sean that we're picking up with claim number 4, or the admission number 4. We need to mimic all of the design we see in nature. That aperture in your eye, it works the same way, or the camera rather, works the same way as the aperture in your eye. It limits the amount of light that goes into it. So we need to mimic all the design we see in nature. I just want to give you the syllogism for it. So mimicry presupposes original design worth imitating. So if I mimic something, what's the expression? Imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? Imitation is the highest form. I have the full quote here, actually. Let me get there. So imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness, right? So mimicry says this is worth copying, right? Random chance does not produce designs worth imitating. Nature is full of designs worth imitating. The eye is one of them, right? Therefore, nature was not designed by random chance, right? So I'll just let Sean do the mimicry. We need to mimic all the design we see in nature. Thank you all for the class. Good, yes. I have way more.